All right, Cosmo, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at some of your MLA formats before we get to the content of the paper. So this is all good. Your headers are good, Times New Roman, size 12. And then I don't see any in-text citations, which maybe there isn't, and I'm just missing it. Which, of course, if you have it involved in the beginning of a sentence, that might be okay, but sometimes it's a little concerning if you don't have them. As far as your works cited, Cosmo, I want to point out you've got this extra space. This needs to be brought up to as far as the top as you can. This is in correct alphabetical order. However, a few MLA errors I want to point out. You've got this extra space here that needs to be dealt with, and I did say for, these links, it's okay if the indenting's a little bit weird because I know the links kind of get screwed up. However, this right here, the 2017, this needs to be indented over. And then if this is still where it is, that's fine because I know Google Docs is a little bit weird with it. But overall, MLA format is okay. We'll see how it plays out in the rest of your paper, but you do have some concerns with the work cited. And I know there's something, I don't remember which source, but I'll bring it up later on. And plus, Cosmo, you were required to have 5 sources, and I only see 4, okay? So be aware of those requirements. But with that, we're going to take a look into your introduction. Your title is pretty good. I think it's a decent title. Moving on. All right, when we take a look at your intro, one of the things I want to point out is this right here. You do have a fragment. Because before research had been conducted on depression, what? And I will point this out a few more times in your video, but I see this as a reoccurring issue with your writing, is that you have these fragments. What you need to do is change this into a comma, and then don't capitalize this, because I think this is what you mean to put together. Before research had been conducted on depression, speculations were that depression only affects adults. Okay, so this one, I'm going to challenge you a little bit. I don't know where this is coming from. And this isn't a matter of, I think you're wrong. It's a matter of, this has caused speculation and skepticism with your audience, and I'm not too sure if this is correct. So this is something that I really don't think is common knowledge. You would need to have some kind of citation or resource that proves this. And then right here, putting no account. This is a little bit awkward. I would get rid of this phrasing. Putting no account is a little bit awkward, so I would get rid of that. And in the same mind with things being awkward, I think there's a little bit of awkwardness with how you follow through with the difference between adults and adolescents and how it plays out in your paper. Underdevelopment of brains could not process such an adult affliction. Okay. But you then go on to say, well, it does actually affect teenagers. So in a way, you're saying this is an adult affliction, but it's still affecting teenagers. And it's a little bit awkward. And I know that you may be recalling these previous thing you have. But right here, today, depression is known to affect adolescents on the same scale. Adults are affected. In the present, factors that did not exist 20 years ago that are contributing to the rise of adolescent mental illnesses today, like anxiety and depression. This right here is a really, really strong thesis, Cosmo, and I'm really good with this. Part of the problem with your introduction is this kind of info in the middle where it goes back and forth between adults and teenagers, and it just needs some more context or resources, and your thesis is good. However, I would have left your paper after here because this right here, adolescents today are more stressed than they were 20 years ago due to modern day technology. This tells me 2 things. Your whole paper is going to be about stress because of modern day technology. Your thesis is typically at the end, and sometimes it can be the second to last sentence. But the problem with this is a different idea. And I can, as a reader, see the connection between mental illnesses, but this is reading to me you're going to talk about stress when this is the purpose of your paper. So overall, your thesis is okay, it's misplaced, and you need some more context with what's going on here. All right, Cosmo, when we move on to your body now, this right here, your first paragraph, is a really strong topic sentence. Clinical depression has been on the rise. A few notes about what's going on with the context of your research. One, according to John Hopkins' Health Review article, The Rise of Teen Depression by Joe Sugarman, you have another fragment here, and I'm going to challenge you that the next time you do writing like this, fragments, that will be the grammar topic you need to work on. And also, right here, you've got an awkward spacing, so that is a typo you need to watch out for. My question to you is what you need to signal to us as a reader is, while, yes, you are talking about teen depression, you need to specify that, especially in your topic sentence, clinical depression in teens has been on the rise. Because even though this is titled The Rise of Teen Depression, this doesn't mean that this is just going to be teen depression. What if the article is comparing teen depression to adult depression? And this is something as a reader, especially, and I'll tell you because I know you've written on things before you want to get your PhD, when you write your dissertation, you're going to have a crap ton of resources. And the people on your board to determine whether or not you get your PhD, they're not necessarily going to look at every article to make sure it's 100%. So that's why you want to bridge that gap as much as you can. So you need to clarify that there. The other thing I would point out is this is a good start. I'll get back to how you introduce this in a second. This right here, the last bit is okay. Depression is on its prime among today's adolescents compared blah, blah. However, this sentence right here, only cognizant of the issue before it comes too late. This, to me, isn't relevant to the fact that it's on the rise. So you need to either add context to here or get it out. The last thing I'm going to say, and this is an issue a lot of people are making, instead of being like, according to the John Hopkins Health Review article, and this is a journal article, all you need to say is, according to Joe Sugarman's article, The Rise of Teen Depression, and then state it. Because this is just a bunch of other stuff that you don't need. That, yes, it gives context to the article, but you only need the author and the article title. And if we look at the end, I know this is a journal article because I looked at it previously. You technically don't need a URL because it is a journal article. You would just leave it as the health review, whatever. And when I notice here, we're getting back into those MLA concerns. You need a space between the dot and the for. The issue, I believe, needs to be capitalized. And then right up here with this as well, you don't need the comma here. And this needs to be capitalized with the O. And then you don't need a period after October. Okay. So be aware of that. Change these things when you introduce articles to authors, article of this states, yada, yada, yada. Okay? All right. As we move on, your next topic sentence is okay. It could use a little bit of work. Being a teenager has its own influence on adolescents' brains. Being a teenager means going through tremendous changes physiologically and mentally. Another kind of grammar error here is when you have two series in a list. You do not need that comma before an and. You do not need this comma. You would only need it if you had physiologically, comma, mentally, comma, and something else. So this is okay because you're talking about the teenage brain. It's a decent topic sentence. Now, as we go through the content, this paragraph is pretty good. The only thing, and I understand why this is confusing, this actually isn't Dr. Carrie Bearden's article. If we go into Google, and I'll pull this up because I don't know how many people are going to make the same error because you are the first one I'm going through. If I pull up the article, if it will load, this is based on Carrie Bearden's work, but as you notice at the end, it's actually by Jacqueline Jansen. So be aware of that. And again, you have that fragment here. You need a comma here because you're saying according to Dr. Carrie Bearden's article. And this is a much better way of introducing it compared to the previous paragraph. And then you go in. All this is pretty good, especially the ending sentence. They have a power of being a potential element to cause depression due to big changes. I think this is a really strong paragraph aside from the grammar things. I do think it might go better up here because it sets up with this is how it's affected in adolescence and then goes into how it's on the rise instead of it's on the rise. Now here's a basis of how it works because it lays the foundation before you build the evidence for that. All right, so a quick jump to Microsoft Word so I could show you a difference. Pause this if you want to look at it. Your topic sentence is okay. It's just structured awkwardly because teenagers today have more in their hands of entertainment tools 20 years ago. The way it's worded can be seen as people 20 years ago had more technology. So reword it to something like here, where it's a little bit more clear of what's going on. And then that makes, because I'll be honest, the way that we read this makes the rest of this confusing. But just moving this info a little bit earlier will make that more clear. All right, so as we move on through the rest of your paragraph, this right here is another fragment, Kasim, but that's not the reality, mostly because you don't want to start a sentence with but. And my problem right here, as they spend more time on entertainment tools, more isolated they become. However, being bored and not being stressed, you haven't really shown a correlation between that and not being isolated. So this is a little bit awkward to say because it just doesn't really have to do with the boredom or the stress in particular, but we see this a little bit here. The more they use it to alleviate their stress, and then we've got a fragment right here with potentially school-related stress. And I do see where you're going with it. I think you just need some more buildup of the isolation before you get to it about how, because we become addicted to this. I don't know. The hard part, honestly, this is okay. The problem is that you say they use this so they don't be bored and so they reduce stress. You need to, I guess, set up that expectation that stress can cause, or isolation can cause stress, and those work together for anxiety and depression for this to be more effective. All right, and moving on, you've got an okay topic sentence, and you talk about social media and cyberbullying, how social media affects depressed teenagers. Here's my concern with you. You have no in-text citations or introduction to, oh wait, you don't even have anything down here. So we have an issue, Kasim. You have things about depression, cyberbullying, social media, and especially when you say things like depression, suicidal thoughts, and substance abuse can go back to social networking media. You have no in-text citations, and you have no indications that this comes from a research or a resource. And I know this is out there somewhere, so this is not cited at all. You need to go back and find your sources for this paragraph and the previous one and put your sources into it. Because this, to me, you're getting it from somewhere else and it's not cited. It's technically plagiarism, which we're not knocking you down in 10th grade the first time doing MLA, but you need to fix that as well. And it's the same thing in the next paragraph as well, is I know that this romantic relationship you get from probably this one right here, but which I'm now noticing you need an and instead of a period, but you don't have that there at all. You need that in the paragraph. All right, and the romantic one I'm not going to go into detail with because you need those 3 paragraphs all need more resources in there. The next one, the loss of interest in activities, which is depression symptom. You should say a symptom of depression could lead to blah, blah, blah. And right here, having depression is like depression, not depressions. It's like having a bully in someone's head. That is how Jo Sugarman describes in her article. Who is him, by the way. And right here, because you've already introduced Jo Sugarman, all you need to say, having depression is like having a bully in someone's head, parentheses, Sugarman, parentheses, period. Because you've already done the article, you don't need all of this mumbo-jumbo. This is okay, and people should learn to recognize it before it comes too late. That's good, because it leads into your conclusion. More prevalent compared to 20 years ago. And Kasim, right here, I know you see this on your screen. These red squiggly lines mean something is wrong. You need to go back and look at that. Your conclusion is pretty good, and we should recognize and get help before it's too late, so that's fine. So overall, let me talk to you about your essay. I think your organization needs some restructure of, here's how the brain works, and then get into how it's on the rise. You need to go back and put your research in your essay, because you've got a lot of instances where research is being used, and I can tell, and you do not have it in there whatsoever, which is technically plagiarism, but I'm just going to knock you down a few points. Your language is pretty good. That's not bad. I think your thesis is developed. It's just not in the right order, and you really need to go back and check some of those grammatical things, especially the fragments, and you've got quite a few typos and stuff as well. But overall, your style is pretty decent. You've got some confusing moments, but I think the biggest challenge for you is restructuring the organization and really making sure you have those resources in check. Please let me know what questions you have and take a look at your rubric, and I will help you from there.